Morning all. There was a surprising interest in the video of Fischer playing Kasparov, where I chose statistically the most common moves of their opening systems and then had a sample game after. Let's do the same thing with Kasparov playing white against Fischer, just from a theoretical opening database from the available data. And this assumes, of course, they wouldn't adjust their openings, or Fischer wouldn't change his opening systems. You know, the King's Indian in Fischer's time, King's Indian defence, was a very popular defence. But nowadays, I did some research on this. It's only among the 2,700 GMs, Radjabov is one of the top exponents of actually the King's Indian defence. Nowadays, I'll play the first few moves. After d4, knight f6, c4. Let's assume Kasparov playing white, so statistically he will play d4 the most times. Fischer would usually play knight f6. Then the usual move is c4. Now the usual move Fischer played here was g6, and you might find it surprising that most GMs nowadays elect in this position for e6. Gryzchuk, for example, 114 games, chess games gone for e6 and 80 for g6, so he's still playing King's Indian but mostly e6 here. Nakamura, though, is a player in this position that is playing g6 still quite a bit, 48 for g6, 30 for e6, but most GMs are playing e6 in this position nowadays. That just says something about the evolutionary state of opening theory, that the Nimzo Indian or the Queen's Indian variations have gained in huge importance compared to the King's Indian defence. But you might think, well, hang on a sec, some players, what about Peter Svidler? The thing is, Peter Svidler is playing g6, but after knight c3 he's playing the Grunfeld defence, and the same with Caruana. So the Grunfeld is also popular, but as far as raw King's Indian defence, there are still one or two exponents, but mainly Timur Radjabov. Nakamura is punting the King's Indian quite a bit. Okay, so let's go on. So Fischer, if his opening repertoire is taken at face value statistically, he'll be playing this position. Bishop g7, so e4 from Kasparov, d6, and Kasparov's favourite choice is actually knight f3 here, the classical variation of the King's Indian. So we'd have castles, bishop e2, e5. So this represents the most important variation perhaps to know in the King's Indian. Black is not losing this pawn tactically. There's no problem here, because after knight takes, we have knight takes e4 on this knight, and there's no desperado or anything because there's bishop takes c3. So this is a very important move in the King's Indian, to play e5 here. White castles, knight c6, d5, knight e7. So black is getting the centre closed and is preparing for a position where f5 is going to be effective, but his queen side is a problem quite often for white gaining space and playing for c5 later. Kasparov's favourite move in this position is knight d2. So you can see the knight's logically placed for later, something like this, for knight c4 to strike at that d6 pawn. This d6 pawn echoes in many different variations of the Indian systems with a fianchetto bishop here. Especially the Benoni, which is very rarely played nowadays, was a favourite of Mikhail Tal, the son of Sorrow. But other systems, d6 is a big problem in a lot of these systems. Here a5 is Fischer's favourite move in this position, and Kasparov's favourite move is a3. Okay, so we reach here a theoretical point of both players if we took the statistically most played moves from move 1. So Kasparov is actually more of a d4 player than a 1e4 player. Okay, and for those of you who would like an example game of Kasparov playing white here, so this is the last point really. We have a game in 1988 as an example where Kasparov was playing Ilya Smirin. Now Smirin in this position played knight d7, so this is logically preparing to advance f5 and maybe use this c5 square, potentially, or at least hold white, try and prevent or discourage white from an immediate c5. But Fischer in this position, there is a game in even later, believe it or not, in 1992, a training game in Yugoslavia, when Fischer was re-emerging to play Spassky again, against the United States wishes in part of Yugoslavia. But there was a training game with Gregoric playing white, and Fischer in that game at this point played bishop d7. So maybe we can try and look at both games actually. So Kasparov playing white against Smirin, knight d7. Okay, let's see what happened. Rook b1, very logical stuff to play b4, f5, b4. So a lot of GMs just don't like this sort of position perhaps nowadays, the King's Indian type positions, because it is very, very double-edged. If your attack doesn't work out on the king side, often you're lost on the queen side. So it's a kind of 1 or 0 scenario compared with the e6 systems, the Nimzo or the Queen's Indian systems, allowing all this, you know, potential space and carnage with c5 is not everyone's cup of tea basically. So b6, f3 from Kasparov, f4 from Smirin. Now knight a4, and already there's a lot of pressure, and c5 looks to be being prepared for. A takes, g5 from Smirin, c5. So this is the thematic plan White's playing. Knight f6, Kasparov takes on d6, cd, and now he locks down the b6 pawn as a target. Bishop d7, but black is looking at b5 a little bit here. Knight c4, b6 under fire again, it's protected. Bishop a3, now d6, that pain in the position is attacked again. Knight e8, and now Kasparov plays g4 as though he's putting a stop to black's attacking prospects. Black now actually takes on g3 because he has the idea of trying to generate some counterplay with g4 here, trying to undermine White's pawn chain, at least to make e4 a target. Kasparov actually now calmly plays bishop c1, so not minding black's f-file activity. G takes, bishop takes, knight f6, and now the bishop uses that pin, bishop g5, and it's got the h4 square. There's nothing to support after h6. The bishop can actually use h4 here as well, rather annoyingly. So black is very tied down miserably to b6. As I say, this kind of scenario is perhaps a great example why the King's Indian defence has lost a lot of popularity. Sometimes you can just get a miserable position a bit like this. Rook a7, and now Kasparov plays rook f2, dual purpose. The rook can either swing across to the queen side, but also it can be used as part of f-file pressure later, like this. Rook b7, very miserable play from black. Rook b3, rook a7, rook b1, protecting the rook with the queen. Rook b7, rook b3. Some repetition here. Now Kasparov plays rook b4, king h8. Now queen f1, as though there's pressure building up on f6, but offering tactically black a little forcing move. Bishop takes b5 to win a pawn. The problem is, yes, at the bare minimum it looks materially as though this is a good idea for black, but after rook takes a4, what has black actually lost in the position which he'll miss and will suffer for? It's the light square bishop. Look at all these light squares. So how concretely now can White later exploit this, or soon exploit this light square bishop being missing here? Well, he plays bishop g2, and the bishop can use this fine diagonal to torture black pretty soon. h6, bishop h4, a lot of pressure on f6 as well. Queen e8, attacking the rook, seemingly resourcefully getting out of the pin. But now again, some dynamic play from Kasparov to celebrate his newfound assets. He plays he plays bishop takes f6. So Kasparov knows that, well, if queen takes b5, bishop takes g7 check, and then rook takes is devastating. Smirin plays rook takes f6. And now we see rook takes f6, just giving up even the rook here. After queen takes b5, the point here is revealed. Kasparov now plays rook e6. Okay, the queen dare not take here because of rook e8 check, and then queen f5. So this is a real problem. If rook takes c4, then I think let's just check. Actually, rook takes c4. Queen f7, yes, queen f7 looks crushing, so just forcing through rook e8. So there's nothing here for black. This is not very good at all for black as well. So, okay, this is a very tricky position. Black played king g8, and now we see the celebration of the light square bishop. Bishop h3. Now black takes on c4 with the rook anyway. And okay, the king is protecting that f7 square against queen f7. But now an absolutely brilliant move from Kasparov. I wonder if you can guess it. If I give you 10 seconds, starting from now. Okay, he plays rook takes h6. Enormous punishment for black not giving up that light square bishop really earlier to win a pawn. Rook takes h6. After bishop takes h6, what else? Anyway, so check, king h8, queen f6 check, and here black is helpless and was forced to resign. Let's have a quick check here, the options for black. It's a forced mate actually in 5. You can see this here. If king h7, check, 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 bishop e6 for example. So anyway, the king's engine defense in Fischer's era was very popular, but nowadays, as I mentioned, a lot of GMs after c4, the most popular move by far among the strongest GMs in the world at the moment is the move e6. So this is just a fictional game really, but fictional game between Kasparov using his statistically most popular choices against Fischer if they didn't change their repertoire at all, which is highly unlikely because even in the 1972 match Fischer surprised everyone by completely playing unexpected openings, so he didn't really want to be prepared for. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the kind of theoretical debate anyway this kind of video creates. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks so much.